surviving 10 years of living with cancer. And I invite all of those people in that landmark to join me in ringing the bell. You have to get up. You have two choices. You can lie down and give up, or you get up. And if you get up, we're going to fight. Welcome to Jack Ostroff's Hope Podcast, Hold On to Positive Energy. Today we're talking about SBRT. It stands for Stereotactic Body Radiation Therapy, as commonly referred to as SBRT. And this is something that, that I became aware of in my research. Back in 2017, I had, after the initial surgery in 2015, first tumor appeared on my left lung, second tumor on my right lung, and both of them were dealt with by a relatively small, not invasive surgery. It was out literally the next day. But the third tumor that popped up was in the middle of my chest. And surgery in the middle of the chest, where you have very little skin and not a whole lot of, in my case, body fat, surgery was not an option. And they presented something called SBRT, and something I'd read about a number of years prior. And before we go there, let's just go through some basics, just to to put things into context. And first is that the content shared on this podcast reflects my personal journey and experiences as a cancer patient. I am not a medical professional, and nothing discussed in this podcast should be considered medical advice. Always consult with your own doctor or qualified healthcare professionals for guidance related to your health, diagnosis, or treatment options. Every person's situation is unique, and professional medical advice should be tailored to your individual needs. So here I was with another growth, and I think at this early stage, we're hoping that we get this one, and nothing else will pop up. We'll get this one, nothing else pops up, but now what do we do about this? Laparoscopic surgery really sort of didn't work at the center of the chest. So they refer to something called stereotactic body radiation therapy. Very interesting from my perspective. I read about this even a year or so before. Apparently in California, this article was showing this unique machinery that was using very targeted radiation to treat relatively small tumors anywhere in the body. And I thought, wow, that's something that I'll probably never see in my lifetime. But give credit to the people at Princess Margaret and the Ontario government for, being current on this thing, being current on this subject. They had dedicated their basement to, installing all this equipment. And, quite shocking to me when I got there to meet with the radiation oncologist. It's like you're entering into a spaceship. Control room, separate area to lie down for treatments, and kind of scary, but on the other hand, kind of neat. Something I never thought was going to be applicable to me, but given the options at that time, that seemed to be very interesting. The tumor itself was pretty small, it's probably about 1 centimeter at that time, and so in my research, I discovered that stereotactic body radiation therapy, SBRT, targets small tumors with large radiation dosages without damaging nearby healthy tissue. And that's sort of the key here, is that it's that targeted. It can deliver optimal dose of radiation in fewer treatment sessions than conventional radiation therapy. It's non-invasive alternative to surgery for some lung, prostate, liver, and pancreatic cancer. So back in 2017, when the cancer returned, I met with the radiation oncology, and she thought this was quite applicable to my situation. And I thought, well, given that surgery wasn't an option, letting this thing grow wasn't an option, we agreed to proceed. Now, it's not as simple as you show up on the day of and you lie down and there you go. I mean, as you can appreciate, you're dealing with a high dosage of radiation. So targeted, meaning that you have to be very precise about all this. So prior to the treatment, you come in and you meet with a nurse practitioner who takes you through the process of SBRT. You get to lie in a bed, but they use this device to strap you in so you're not moving. But in addition to that, it's about your breathing as well. Because if you're breathing, your chest is moving up and down, and that will affect, of course, the target. And so what they do is they train you how to breathe and hold your breath so that you can be still for, in this case, up to about 45, 50 seconds. It was a little surprising about how much energy it took out of me. But at the end of the day, it made a lot of sense. And so we arranged for the appointment. And because it was a relatively small tumor, it took 3 sessions. Basically, you come in, you have 2 assistants that set you up, put you in the right position, and then you get to practice what you learned in the prior sessions, like holding your breath so that the team can target the radiation beams. And when you're holding your breath and holding your body still, the system can be very accurate. So it's a function of being very disciplined. You got to hold your breath longer than you might think, but you are capable of doing it. I did it. You can do it. And after 3 sessions, after each session, I got to go home. And the first day, quite frankly, it was like no effect. It was like walk in the park. Second session was a little fatigued. By the 3rd session, there's fatigue. The fatigue lasts for about a week. And the result was amazing. That little tumor just disappeared. Put things into context, this is now a new tool, well, relatively new, from 2017 to 2025, 8 years. It's pretty new. That is extremely effective on growths that are probably up to about 2 centimeters. Smaller the better. Get to stuff early, which is why this monitoring, constant scanning. In my case, I'm scanned every 3 months, so they can stay on top of things and move quickly to resolution. So, and unfortunately, about a year later, discovered a tumor in my liver. And it was growing pretty quickly. It started about 1 when we found it, but after another CT scan, it had grown to about 2 centimeters. And so the issue was, are we going to try some medication to deal with this, or are we going to do surgery, which is quite complex and invasive, or could we do SBRT? And there are some that are, don't radiate the liver. However, there are others that I'll tell you a little story about that are fine with it. Based on my first experience, I decided to go ahead and radiate the liver because it was pretty small. And it was really interesting to go in and see the scan after I had the SBRT session. We go in and look at the scan results, and literally you would see this round black hole with a sort of white in the middle. I mean, it had been hit directly and clearly was working, and literally after about 6 months had dissipated entirely. So very successful. In last year, I had the privilege of seeing this kidney oncologist of renown, and spoke to him at length about my situation, and asked his general opinion. What do we do going forward? He says, zap everything. So, there's someone who's quite informed, who's will tell you, he's telling me, get there early, zap what you can, and leads to a better result. Not always applicable, certainly not in my case, but it was an interesting perspective for someone so knowledgeable. This technology is absolutely amazing, and it's been very effective for me. However, I had another 2 years down the road, had an issue with regards to my pancreas. It was on the tail of my pancreas, and I had a growth that was probably about 1 centimeter. And we were watching it, and it started to grow a bit larger. And we thought about, well, why don't we do something laparoscopically, take that out? And then we also looked at it from an SBRT perspective. And I went to the surgeon and I said, well, in your opinion, what is safer for me? I mean, the surgery is a challenge. You never know how your pancreas is going to react. Also, there could be some excessive bleeding. SBRT could be very much applicable in the sense that it was small, treatable. And surprisingly, the surgeon said to me, if I were you, I'd get the SBRT. So that was my third session. And in terms of the SBRT, we had 4 or 5 sessions. Recovery was a bit longer. It was simply fatigue, nothing else for me. And it looked really good. After the first few months, we saw a reduction. And then we saw something really strange happen in the next 3 months, where the size of the pancreas all of a sudden ballooned. And for those of you who know a little bit about cancer, it doesn't just, well, it can grow aggressively, but this was like huge. It'd gone from like 2.5 to 5 centimeters quickly. So was it cancer? Could it have been a cyst? Was it simply, retaining water? Could we do, for example, some biopsy to figure out what was going on? And so the answer was biopsy was out because it's too dangerous. As you puncture, the pancreas, it could lead to all sorts of other issues. So we looked at it, and I've kept looking at it to this day. And so something interesting in terms of context, while we weren't sure what had happened, we kept monitoring it. And last year, I met the radiation oncologist again, and she looked at it. She says, and it kept coming up in the scans as cancer. And yet, when I went to see the radiation oncologist that I hadn't seen for a couple of years, she looked at it, she says, I don't see cancer. She says, I see, possibly a cyst and fat and grizzle and all sorts of other things, but it's not lighting up like cancer. So, hence I refer to myself as mystery meat. Literally, nobody knows what this is. Nobody wants to operate on it because of this potential side effects, the bleeding and so on. And yet, I will tell you, as time has passed and treatments have gotten better, and so my cancer has shrunk, that tumor remains constant. It doesn't change. Or perhaps it's not a tumor. We don't know. So I'd like to say it's fascinating. It is in a sense. Is it scary? Well, I guess it's not an issue it's not today's issue. It's stable. It hasn't done anything for a couple of years. So I guess that's a good thing. What does it mean going forward? I don't know. We'll deal with stuff as we go through. But I go back to something I said before in terms of lessons learned. I mean, this is so important for all of us, is to read articles. And, they're posted in the newspaper almost on a daily basis, and you have to should be selective in terms of your reading, but it was it. I found it very fascinating. I had read about this SBRT treatment in an article literally months before it became available. And credit to the Princess Margaret Hospital, credit to the Ontario government for being up to speed, so innovative. And these are now in many hospitals that I'm aware of, and For those of you for those of you in Toronto, there are obvious options for you, and apparently there's many other centers across Canada that will offer you such treatment. So you do have choices. And once again, early detection is what it's all about. So stay on top of things, get your scans, see your oncologist. But remember that SBRT, if it isn't raised by an oncologist, is something you should raise under the right circumstances. Is it small? Is it something that they could treat? And the answer is pretty much anywhere in the body, this is an option. In the old days, the radiation treatment would be sort of a broadband, approach. This is very targeted. It doesn't affect anything other than the growth itself. So quite revolutionary, quite effective, so much easier than surgery. So I kind of lean towards that. My oncologist, my kidney oncologist who did say zapping is great. It certainly has its functions, and it can be great under the right circumstances. So keep that in mind. Also, keep doing your homework. Keep reading about advances. I was reading about something about mRNA advances in terms of vaccines the other day. This is just fascinating in terms of what it could possibly do for certain cancers. Kidney cancer doesn't seem to be the first target of it. It's a smaller subset within all the cancers, but it seems that what they learn in one section or one area of treating disease seems to be applicable to kidney cancer. So that's the good news. There are innovations. And over the course of my 10 years of being at this, there have been numerous innovations that have basically extended my life. I've been here for 10 years because of those innovations and because of the good people at Princess Margaret and TGH and Northrop General and Sunnybrook. And thankfully, I'm here, which is what it's all about. I'm very appreciative of that and everyone who has been part of my treatment. So I wish you well. Do your homework. Read, read, because this is be invested in your own life and your own well-being. I think it's always helpful. And don't be shy about asking your oncologist about, where SBRT could be applicable for you. And wish you good health. And thank you very much for tuning in.